It is a new era of Jim Crow in the state of Georgia and spreading across the country. Whenever I think of the title, The New Jim Crow, I obviously think of Michelle Alexander's phenomenal book. But unfortunately, the Republicans here in the state of Georgia have taken that to heart, and they are instituting new legislation. Have signed into law last night. Brian Kemp signed into law oppressive voter suppression legislation that absolutely is aimed at stopping African Americans from keeping this state blue now that we have turned the state blue in the special election on January 5th, as well as the general election back in November. Republicans in Georgia passed sweeping election bills into law Thursday, making it the first presidential battleground to impose new voting restrictions following President Joe Biden's victory in the state. The new law imposes new voter identification requirements for absentee ballots, empowers state officials to take over. This is the take over election, local election boards, limits the use of ballot drop boxes, and makes it a crime to approach voters in line to give them food and water. Now, a lot of these restrictions that they're implementing go against what they actually put into place themselves to help them in previous elections. But once black voters begin using these same policies to win in 2020, Republicans in the state said enough. Video was taken while Georgia Governor Brian Kemp was holding a press conference to sign the bill Thursday, and it shows Georgia Representative Park Cannon knocking on the door of Kemp's office and then being led away from the rotunda at the state capitol in handcuffs. Let's take a look at this footage.
Why does she have to step back?
The governor is signing a bill that affects all Georgians. Why is he doing it in private, and why is he trying to keep elected officials who are representing us out of the process?
Exactly.
I know you don't have any control over anything other than suppressing people's right to vote and using your guns and your abilities to talk.
Yeah, you said you give her one more time, like you're going to do something. Are you serious?
No, you are not.
No, she's not under arrest. What is
For what? Under arrest for what? For trying to see something that our governor is doing? Our governor is signing a bill that affects all Georgians, and you're going to arrest an elected representative. Why does the governor have more power than a representative?
Why are you arresting
Why are you arresting her?
That's what I'm asking.
Stop arresting her.
Why are you arresting
Why?
her? Why are you arresting her?
Cite the violation. Cite the code. What is she in violation of? I want you to cite the code. Cite the code.
What did she do? 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 Excuse me, what did she do? 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 What did she do?
That will affect all Georgians. And you are choosing
Why is she getting arrested?
an elected official.
Let me say something. We sit here every single day and we defend these bad bills, like SB 202. And all we asked is for her to be able to see them sign a bill that is signing our rights away. And you arrested her. She did not touch anybody. She did not say any slanderous words to any of these standards. But you're going to tell me that you arrested a sitting state representative for nothing. She didn't do anything but knock on the governor's door. I'm done. I'm so done. I'm so done. Protect and serve who?
That's the question. Protect and serve who? Apparently, they're here to protect and serve the new Jim Crow that is being instituted not only in the state of Georgia, but Republicans and conservatives are trying to institute it across the country. Georgia State Patrol said in a statement that Representative Cannon was beating on the door to the governor's office, and when instructed to stop, continued onto the governor's ceremonial office door marked with a, quote, governor staff only sign, and knocked on that door. Representative Cannon refused. This is a statement from them. Representative Cannon refused to stop knocking on the door and was placed under arrest and escorted out of the Capitol. She was charged with 2 felonies: felony obstruction and preventing or disrupting General Assembly session. Attorney Gerald Griggs told the media he is representing her. On Twitter, he posted a section of Georgia's Constitution which states that members of both Georgia's houses shall be free from arrest except for felony treason or breach of peace. After getting arrested for I just want to pause at this part real quick because the underlying implications of the truth of what's happening in the state of Georgia could not be any more transparent. Because if the excuse is that this was for Governor Kemp's staff only, there's photographs going around where it was a signing ceremony with nothing but white men standing there signing this oppressive legislation. After getting her release from jail, Attorney Griggs spoke with the press alongside Senator Raphael Warnock, who is Cannon's reverend. Here's what the senator had to say.
Today is a very sad day for the state of Georgia.
Yes, it is.
I am part Cannon's pastor. I know her. She's a very intelligent woman and a very dignified and committed public servant. And what we have witnessed today is a desperate attempt to lock out and squeeze the people out of their own democracy. And in this effort, in this case, they're literally being locked down. The people are being locked down and locked out of their own democracy.
Yep.
But this effort to silence the voices of Georgians who stood up in a historic election in November and January will not stand. And so we stand with the people of Georgia.
Thank you.
The goal of voter suppression is to so demoralize the electorate that people don't even bother to try. But that will not happen. We are going to take this fight to give the people their voices back. We're not going to let them take us back.
No. Not at all.
And so we're grateful for those who are here in support of Representative Cannon. She is an outstanding public servant. We're praying for her. We're praying for her family. But we are praying also for Georgia and for the soul of our democracy. We are witnessing right now a kind of wrestling in the soul of Georgia. Will we go forward or will we go backwards? We will not allow a few politicians in their craven
That's right.
lust for power
That's right.
to take us back. The democracy doesn't belong to the politicians, it belongs to the people.
That's right.
The democracy belongs to the people. The issue at hand here is the fact that the halls of power are under control of Republicans in the state of Georgia, and they've been able to implement this policy, this legislation, this draconian legislation, with almost little to no structural way of stopping them. All the efforts to date have come from the people. The problem that we have right now is that we need the powerful to do their part, the politically powerful to do their part. And that includes on the federal level. It is going to require more than just abolishing the filibuster to pass the Senate version of H.R. 1. Because as soon as President Biden signs a new Voting Rights Act into law, it then is going to be contested and challenged in the courts. What we're dealing with here, folks, is the fact that if Joe Biden and the Democratic Party do not play hardball, Republicans have enough structural power to prevent us from being able to even implement a new Voting Rights Act. What do I mean? As soon as they implement it, it will be, as soon as Joe Biden signs a new voting rights into law, it will be challenged in the conservative judiciary that Donald Trump had 4 years to pack over and over and over again. I think over 2/3 of the federal judiciary has been packed with conservative apparatchiks. And so as soon as that legislation is signed into law, which it needs to be signed into law, it's going to be attacked and possibly struck down by conservatives on the bench, which means the Democrats have to play hardball. They are not only going to have to abolish the filibuster, they're also going to have to pack the courts. They're going to have to pack the courts, or else we are looking at a structural shift in this country that is going to last our lifetimes. This is not a time where Democrats can simply sit back and say, oh, we're going to let this work itself out and we're going to have more respect for the institutions than we do the people. Raphael Warnock is absolutely right. The democracy belongs to the people, not politicians, but politicians have their boots on our neck. And they have had it there for some time. And now we're at this culminating moment where Democrats have enough power. The question is, do they have enough will to actually do what is necessary to bring this country back into balance? Being in balance at this juncture means undoing the things that Republicans did over the last 4 years to tilt the balance of power towards the minority tyranny of conservatism. And so, yes, they absolutely are going to have to abolish the filibuster. They're absolutely going to have to sign a new Voting Rights Act, but they're also going to have to pack the courts in order to protect it from activist conservative judges who have now been packed into the judiciary, the federal judiciary, by Donald Trump. If we don't do both, it's not going to work. If we don't do both, we're looking at an all-out assault across the country that will be replicated by Republicans because they control state houses, state senates, and they control so many of the governor seats. And with the protection of the federal judiciary being packed by conservatives, they also have protection on the federal level. Joe Biden had a couple of things to say about this law. I want to take a listen in to his clip comparing Jim Crow to Jim Eagle. Take a listen in.
I'm going to spend my time doing three things. One, trying to figure out how to pass the legislation passed by the House. Number one. Number two, educating the American public. The Republican voters I know find this despicable. Republican voters. The folks outside this White House. I'm not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about voters. Voters. And so I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I mean, this is gigantic, what they're trying to do. And it cannot be sustained. And do everything in my power, along with my friends in the House and the Senate, to keep that from becoming the law.
Oh, I get it now. He's saying a small crow compared to a big eagle. Okay. The point is that you're going to have to do more because Republican voters, while they'll look at this and say, yeah, that's bad, a bad piece of legislation, they won't lift a finger to overturn it. They won't. In fact, they will use it to maintain power. Republicans have been playing hardball in this country for decades. And Democrats are still trying to figure out if they're going to fight back the same way. I mean, that's the bottom line. The bottom line is whether or not Democrats are willing to get their knuckles bloodied. We're not talking about getting our hands dirty at this point. We're talking about, are you going to get your knuckles bloodied in order to fight back against the onslaught that has been coming from Republicans for 40 years? The problem is that too many Democrats have more respect for the institutions. The institution of the filibuster, which is not constitutional, but is deeply rooted in racism in this country. Democrats have more respect for that than they do the will of the people. Democrats have more respect for the idea that the way the judiciary is right now is somehow how it has always been, when that is factually untrue. They ignore their power to do constitutionally, to use the constitutional power to arrange the courts as they see fit, based on the will of the people. And the people are screaming at the top of our lungs. In fact, we don't have anything else to say. That's the thing. There's nothing left to say in terms of trying to convince people, in terms of trying to rationalize with them, in terms of trying to negotiate with them. You cannot be rational with irrational people. You cannot negotiate with ideological terrorists like Republicans. You simply cannot. And we've seen that this, as soon as black people stood up and said, here we are in the state of Georgia, we want to go in a different direction, They doubled and tripled down on voter suppression. And so they said never again. So the real question is not who's going to talk about it. I mean, I hate to use the phrase, but who's actually going to be about it? Who's actually going to fight on behalf of the people, which is going to require you abolishing the filibuster and packing the courts. And if we're not talking about abolishing the filibuster and packing the courts, you're not really talking about anything. You're not. Because all it's going to do is give people, if Joe Biden gets as far as signing a new voting rights into law, it's going to give people the sense of victory, only to have it snatched away throughout the federal judiciary. And if by chance it even gets to the Supreme Court, you know damn well that the conservative leaning of that court is going to crush a new Voting Rights Act, just like they crushed it in Shelby versus Holder. The reason we're here in the first place is because they gutted the original Voting Rights Act and took away the Department of Justice ability to screen key states, including the state of Georgia, who had a history. Let me just set this up again. The reason we are where we are right now today is because the Supreme Court in Shelby versus Holder gutted the Voting Rights Act, which required that any state that had a history of voter suppression must go to the Department of Justice in order to get any changes to their voting system approved by the Department of Justice. The Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court gutted that. I believe it was Section 5 of the original Voting Rights Act. They gutted that requirement, and now these states have done every single thing they could to crush, to overthrow through the tyranny of the minority, because what they realize is that America's changing. America is changing. It is not only becoming browner, blacker, it's becoming more progressive. And these conservative ideologues, they're dying out. They're passing down some of this bigotry and the hatred and vitriol to their children, for sure. You can see videos of it all over TikTok. But the point is, the demographic shift in this country necessitates that the Republican Party either gets over their bigotry and moves into the 21st century out of the dark ages, or their alternative was, let's just suppress the hell out of the vote. Even to the extent of specifically targeting people who vote on Sunday, religious people. I want to play a clip from U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde Smith. She's a Republican from Mississippi. And I want you to listen how she's turning this on its head now, where so many African-American churches around the country, they organize on Sundays and they have souls to the polls. Souls to the polls. I'll never forget, we used to organize that all the time, and you literally had thousands of black churchgoers leave church on Sunday morning and go directly to the polls. And it was a statement of not only their faith, but also their civic responsibility. Listen to this Republican senator from Mississippi turn it on its head and say the reason that we can't have voting on Sunday is because we have to have respect for God. Take a listen in.
Very much for
Thank
that.
you.
Senator Schumer's question was, he was wondering why on Sundays Georgia would not participate in an electoral process of gathering signatures of registration and things on Sunday. And I would just like to respond to that. Georgia's a southern state just like Mississippi. I cannot speak for Georgia, but I can speak for Mississippi on why we would never do that on a Sunday or hold an election on a Sunday. You know, this is our currency. This is a dollar bill. This says the United States of America, in God we trust. Etched in stone in the U.S. Senate chamber is in God we trust. When you swore in all of these witnesses, the last thing you said to them in your instructions was, so help you God. In God's word in Exodus 20:18, it says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. So that is my response to Senator Schumer. Thank you, Madam.
Let's trace her lineage in Mississippi, and I guarantee you there's somebody in her family who either participated in or watched or was at a church where they lynched black folks on a Sunday. Was that keeping it holy? Was it keeping it holy when you all took us from our homes, drug us to the public square, strung us up on a tree, by a tree, burned us, and you had your little white babies around there having a picnic around us on a Sunday. Was that keeping it holy? But now y'all want to keep it holy in order to suppress our vote. See, I ain't got time. Listen, there's not a person in this country who really want to talk to me about these evangelical Christianity as they use it as a bludgeoning tool for power, political power, and not economic power. That's it. But they want to talk about keeping it holy. Is it keeping it holy when the United States of America, in God we trust, we got no problems dropping bombs on people on a Sunday? We've got no problems exploiting people for their wealth on Sunday. There's literally nothing. Matter of fact, Sunday's not even Sabbath, but I digress. There's nothing that white evangelicals are not willing to do on a Sunday except let you vote, and they think that's keeping it holy. Blood-drenched, hypocritical. This is where we are. And there's literally nothing else to say. Nothing left to say. If we are not going to institute structural changes right now while Democrats have the power, then we can forget about this for the rest of our lives, because Republicans have had no problem instituting structural change throughout the last 40 years in ways that they now have a stranglehold on this country despite being in the minority. We are literally being led by a minority of voices that are rooted in nothing but ignorance, bigotry, hatred, and most of all, greed. Because at the end of the day, they don't give a damn about anything else they just said. What they care about is making sure that they can maintain political power so that they can help expand their economic power. That's it. That is the totality of what we're dealing with in this country.